Yes, a master of the Drunken Fist.
When I was challenged to choose the colors for one of the more unique subclasses of the monk in the Way of the Drunken Master, I was excited at first, as Jackie Chan's Drunken Master is one of my favorite movies. And as someone who's watched a vast library of martial arts films, that says a lot. But then reality began to sink in when I sat down to write the script. Why, you may ask, considering I've written a lot already about applying the color pie to the classes of Dungeons & Dragons. You'd think I'd be confident about it. Well, the truth is in the nature of the subclass itself. It is unpredictable and hard to pin down by its very nature, and because of that, I wrestled with a lot of ideas. But here we are. In the end, I found that the answer was right in front of me all along, and it makes perfect sense. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. This will be the first episode in the Subclass Colors series, and in this series, we will do things a little different. Considering the core classes of D&D are a bit broader in how they can be interpreted, it's fine to run through many combinations. But for the subclasses, I want to talk about how they refine their given class, and because of this, we'll simply be choosing their core color or colors. And with that, join me in this experiment as we peel back the layers of this subclass and find out what core color or colors best represent it. The Way of the Drunken Master is a subclass that pushes its core class in a very different direction, as the monk on its own is very predictable, stubborn, and stoic, whereas the Drunken Master throws all of that out the window to craft a way of fighting that is messy and careless. Or is it? Could we be misled? Is there something more to this way of fighting than it gives off in its messy display of drunken motions? That's the thing about this class, and the history of this martial art in general. The truth is somewhere in the middle. Traditionally, drunken boxing, or Shi Quan, is a style of martial arts that mimics the motions of a drunk. The true beauty of this martial art is that it's a style of grappling, dodging, and feinting in unpredictable ways. Its intention isn't so much to gain an advantage from its motions, but rather to give your opponent the impression that you are at a disadvantage. In the end, it's a subset of Kung Fu that takes a lot of training and practice, and truth be told, the consumption of alcohol would only hamper those practice motions. With all of that said though, I don't want to take away from your Jackie Chan Drunken Master fantasy, and in the end, if that's how you want to play your character, all the power to you, as I think this is everyone's first thought when they decide on this subclass. Okay, let's step away from its real-world influences for 1 second and get into the game itself to get a better idea of what color or colors work for this subclass. And to do that, I want to look at some of the first proficiencies you gain as a Drunken Master to see what it tells us. At level 3, you do gain Brewer Supplies, which is fitting, but I think the most telling one is your other new proficiency, and that is Performance. If we look at our traditional roots of this martial art, we do see that more than anything, it is a performance, or a way of acting that is a mimicry of drunkenness without the indulgence. What I mean is that it's a martial art that mixes practical movements with impractical performance. It's an odd mixture of a jester and a monk in many ways. This concept that it's more performance over consumption is strengthened when we take into consideration that drinking wasn't so much a major part of the lives of its core practitioners, as the creation of this style is rooted in both Buddhist and Taoist monasteries. I believe the addition of the Brewer Supply is there to provide people with a way to play as they envision it to be in their minds, and that's fine. But in the end, it's an act that tricks your opponent into lowering their guard. And it's the added fluidity that impersonating drunkenness provides. And that's the important part to remember. The next skill I want to point out comes at level 11, and that is Drunkard's Luck. Now, that's an interesting point, and is another aspect that solidifies my decision, but I don't want to say what it is yet, so I want you to take a moment and think about what color you would assign to a concept like luck. Do you have it? Alright. Hold on to that thought and let's move on to the next part. So with all of that covered, What does this mean for this subclass, and how does it refine our understanding of its base class in the monk? The first color that came to me initially was, oddly enough, the entire color pie. My belief at the time was that by tapping into this unpredictable and wild way of fighting, the Drunken Master almost becomes any color at any time, flipping and flopping out of focus. And while this sounds good when I describe it this way, it just isn't focused enough for me and doesn't really provide us with any understanding of what this subclass brings to the table. Imagine tapping into this subclass and then applying 5 colors to what you've created. It really doesn't do anything, does it? So from there, I began stripping away colors one by one until it became obvious. The truth behind this subclass was right in front of me all along, and was a color that I would rarely assign to a monk in general. I don't want to get too much into my thoughts about the monk class yet, but I do think there is one color that would be rare with that class, and that is red. Yep, red. Let's think about it for a minute here and see what I mean, and soon you'll understand that it checks all of the boxes. Red is the color of restless instability. It is the color of expression and movement, of joy and luck. To me, red explains what lies at the root of the Drunken Master. It is an unpredictable, performative martial art that looks to keep its opponent off balance by being off balance itself. It's also a martial art that is playful and fun. It doesn't adhere to strict movements per se, at least in the way we think of when we think of traditional martial arts, and instead opts for a more unpredictable way of fighting. Sure, these moves are practiced and learned, but the beauty of this style is all about its expression and its performance. Concepts very true to red. Something that pushes back against the ritualistic and stoic ways of many traditional monks. So if you plan on moving towards this way of playing your monk, consider applying red to them and allowing them to shed that seriousness for playfulness. And in the end, you'll build a more fun and engaging character. Well, I hope you enjoyed the first subclass video. I really enjoyed this one. I love the Way of the Drunken Master. And also thanks a bunch to Phil Kearney for picking this topic. And a special thanks to my newest Patreon, Rak Eadsmasha, and the rest of my Patrons who support me. The Way of the Drunken Master isn't exactly a subclass that I've tried out myself, as I don't really like playing monks, but this martial art, in the traditional sense, is something I'm super fond of. So writing this was a lot of fun, actually. Alright, with that friends, I'll catch you in the multiverse. Bye.